guys, I am back for part 2 of talking about the Rockets and whether they're legitimate contenders. And in the last video I was really focused on the Rockets, the pros and cons of their small ball. And in this video I'm going to be more focused on the actual series that will be taking place with a 4-5 seed in the West, so Rockets Thunder. And before I actually start talking about the matchup, go into analysis and prediction, I really like to discuss why this series is so interesting from the perspective of players' legacies and narratives. We're going to start by talking about Russell Westbrook. This series is super important for his legacy. After losing in the first round 3 times in a row, first was to the Rockets, then the Jazz, and then the Blazers, Russell Westbrook was tired of losing in the first round. So what did he do? He left OKC, the team he's been with his whole life, or his whole career, to pair up with another superstar in James Harden and actually be a contender. If he suffers another first round exit, especially to the team that he left after winning with them for so many years, people are going to start questioning how much he really contributes to winning basketball. So I think he needs to win this series, especially if he wants to make it in the Hall of Fame. This series is going to be super important. If he doesn't win this series, this is going to be a blemish on his record forever.
So, Russell Westbrook, if you're watching this video, which I know you're not, you need to win this series.
So to really understand what this series could do for Chris Paul's narrative, you have to rewind a year, where the Rockets are regulars in the Western Conference Finals. They almost knocked off Golden State and went to the finals one year as well. And the Rockets decide they don't need Chris Paul anymore. He's getting older. He's not as productive. So they trade him to OKC for Russell Westbrook and some draft picks. And OKC completely blew up their core, got rid of Westbrook, George for a bunch of young players and future draft picks that are barely even, that are
younger than me right now. They're 15-year-olds.
And they were doubted. Everyone doubted CP3 and the Thunder. They had a 0.2% chance of making the playoffs at the beginning of the season. So I think no matter what, this season will look good on Chris Paul's record, even if the Thunder get swept. However, if the Thunder pull off this series and win this series, this would be huge for Chris Paul's narrative. It will show that Chris Paul is a true leader. Days later, I actually had to move into college, so now I'm all settled. This is going to be my new setup. But honestly, let's just get right into this. Danilo Gallinari also has something to prove. He hasn't played over 70 games since 2013 due to nagging injuries. And if Gallo can prove that he can provide value to a contending team without getting injured, his stock will rise, he'll get paid more in the offseason, and it'll be really good for his narrative. So shout out Gallo. And last but not least is Mike D'Antoni. His legacy is really on the line. He made drastic changes to his team, going full send on small ball. If his team gets knocked out in the first round, he's quite frankly going to look like a clown. Okay, now let's get into a little bit of analysis. So the thing I'm most concerned about from the Rockets end is their ability to guard the Thunder guard trio, and Chris Paul, Shea, and Dennis Schroeder. Paul is shifty, Schroeder is lightning quick, and Shea is both. I think the defensively mediocre Harden, and especially Westbrook, will get lazy guarding them and give up easy buckets. I think if the Thunder guards run a pick and pop with Gallinari, it could be deadly. Westbrook and Harden will have to quickly rotate on a 6'10 guy who needs a second of being open to knock down a 3. Steven Adams and Nerlens Noel also pose a threat to the Rockets. Although Adams isn't a star, he's a very underrated center and he does his job how he should. He ranks 7th in the NBA in offensive rebounds per game, and he's really good at putting the ball back up for easy buckets. I see this happening a lot against Houston. Noel is also athletic for his size and won't have a problem switching onto a quicker guy like House or Covington. In addition to that, the Thunder are the best team in the league in the clutch, and it kind of makes sense. In close games, the ball runs through Chris Paul, and he either makes the right passes and takes shots that either have a high probability of going in or that he'll probably get fouled on. And I think the Thunder are also so good in the clutch because there's no doubt of who the leader of the team is. Whereas with the Rockets, the ball can run through Westbrook or Harden. That's a question. But Paul is the only veteran leader on that team. He's the best player on that team. So all the players defer to his leadership and trust his decision making. And now for a couple things where the Rockets can exploit the Thunder. I think it would be huge if the Rockets can exploit Steven Adams off switches. Adams isn't the quickest player, and if the Rockets set off and on-ball screens on him, Adams might have to guard Harden or Westbrook, which would probably be an easy bucket for Houston. I also wouldn't be surprised if the Rockets draw plays with the sole purpose of getting Adams to cover a skilled guard. If the Rockets do a good job of really exploiting Steven Adams, I think their best case scenario is that OKC has to go small ball too and play the Rockets game, the game that the Rockets have been practicing and OKC has basically no experience with. I think if they exploit Steven Adams to that extent, that the Thunder are like, we can't even win because Steven Adams is such a liability, I think the Rockets will win the series. A stat that I found interesting is that OKC gives up the 3rd lowest per 3-point percentage in the league. But honestly, despite that, Houston has so many threats from deep, I don't think it will matter that much. Because any player on that team can basically go off from 3 on any given night. Here's something else that no one's talking about, but I found pretty interesting. So OKC's young guards and Schroeder and Shea play hard on defense. They play good defense. But growing a defensive IQ takes years and years of experience. So I think that James Harden might just go at their necks in early games and just try to draw as many fouls as possible, try to get them into foul trouble early so they can't even play in the 3rd quarter and they have to sit out with 5 fouls when the game's really heating up. All right, now on to final thoughts and prediction. So in terms of star power and skill, I'm definitely giving the edge to Houston. They have 2 borderline superstars who can really light it up on any given night in James Harden and Russell Westbrook. However, I really do feel like OKC counters Houston well. The Rockets shoot the most threes in the league, and their lineup is filled with shooters. OKC is one of the best teams at defending the 3 in the league. The Rockets have trouble defending shifty, quick guards. The Thunder have 3 of those. And when it comes down to it, there's no one I trust more in situations than my man Chris Paul. OKC in 7.